Hi, everybody. This is Max Dashu, and this is a short that I put together. It was at the end of the Witches and Pagans show, which is already very long, and I never seem to get around to it. So I'm just going to make a short clip about the sweat houses in European societies. And this isn't very well known to a lot of people. As you see here, we're going to look at the Czech Republic, Finnish sauna, Russia, the bozhena, the teach-an-alais in Ireland, and the Pedras Formosas in Galicia, which is now part of Spain and Portugal, this region. And so there, Pedras Formosas means beautiful stones. And there are these elaborately carved stones, which are actually saunas, gateways to saunas, like you see here. There's a doorway with a very low entrance, very similar to the Native American sweat lodges that you have to bend down low to go in there. This is the main chamber. There's an outside chamber here for, I guess, taking your clothes off or preparing to enter. And then in the back is a furnace that heats the whole thing. So here's a color picture, and I'm going to give you this is the best photo I just found. This is beautiful carvings with these grace aliens and a lot of curved patterns that are carved into the stone, especially the Pedra Formosa is this main stone panel that faces you as you enter into the sweat lodge, the sweat house. And so they all have these low entrances. These are two different views of the same sweat house at Alto das Eiras. And actually, it's very similar. Oh, here's a better view before I go to the next slide. You can see there's an antechamber. There's the Pedra Formosa, which is the gateway into the sanctuary of the healing ground, the sweat house. And then these conical furnaces in the back where the fires are lit and the stones are heated up. But this pattern, this is broken, obviously. I want you to look closely at this sort of an upside down T shape, because it's illuminated more. Well, actually, here it is again. This is a reconstruction of Alto das Eiras, what it must have looked like originally. And you see benches on the sides. There would probably have been benches on the inside too. This is facing the main sauna chamber. But here is a better picture also from Briteros of one of the most famous stones. And there you have a very clear marking along with the usual patterns that we've seen of a human figure with outstretched arms, the legs parted, and there's kind of a vulvic opening here directly above the opening that goes into the chamber. So there's this very clear vaginal symbolism. You're going into the womb, into this healing chamber. And so that's repeated in some of these stones. Here's another one from San Fins, and two views of this main entrance with the same kind of carved decoration that we've been seeing. Obviously, a lot of these have been broken, but here the reconstruction of, you can see there's a lot of stonework which has partly been disassembled, but this probably would have been very, very impressive looking when it was in its prime. And the time period we're talking about, this is the Castro culture, or the hill fort culture, that comes from the end of the Bronze Age all the way up to the period of the Roman domination. And this is primarily in northwestern Iberia, as it would have been called then. So then there's another site which is called Aguas Santas. This is Galician for Aguas Santas, the holy waters. And so you have it actually built into a church. So they took whatever these original formations were and they fit them into a Christian structure, sort of an early Romanesque style temple. I don't know what these reliefs are here on this side. Now you can see that the entry is much taller. And these are some other sculptures from the Aguas Santas site. And then Castro de Bonero, and this one's really gone through it and been beaten up. It's really missing a lot of the original structure. You can't even really make out what the carvings would have looked like at that time. But there is this definite move toward adapting pieces of these broken sculptures. And here again, we saw this on one of the earlier entryways. They've actually placed an old entryway over this larger one. And so it's just I don't know, it's like a double entrance almost. But there's somebody that remembered that the entrance is supposed to be low and put that in there. Now this is another view of the one that we just saw, and this fills it out for us a little bit more. So you can see the original stone shape that was built into this church structure. You can see the vaulting up there a little bit above. It does have that larger gateway going in there. And this is Santa Maria de Aguas Santas. So this is Saint Maria of the Holy Waters at Ajaris. And then you can get a little glimpse here that there was a tank with a pool of water there. The Holy Waters is the name of the church now, dedicated to this female saint. But here's a better view of the pool that stands directly outside the entrance. And so this is something, of course, in a sweat house, you come out and you're really, really hot and you need to cool off, and that's part of the healing experience. And so I'm assuming that this would be for that purpose, although you can see here there's also the sacred well of Santa Maria. And so it's said, this is a Google grab that I did, that the water in here, that they would come and take away water and they would use it to cleanse the house, you know, as a clearing, blessing water, protective, and removing negative influences. And this is also that same site. You can get another view of the kind of, this is not original with the saunas. This is based on the church structure. But there's these very interesting stairways going down into the lower area where there are these stones. And it's kind of hard to make them out, but they do seem kind of like ancestor stones. They're reminiscent, especially this one. It seems like it has the necklaces, the rows or the ropes of necklaces that you'll see in megalithic sculpture in Portugal and Spain both, in a much earlier era. But, you know, I can't really tell from this photo if that's what's there. And this one is not a Pedra Formosa, but it's a well, and just to note the way that the sacred waters were integrated in the very early churches, which got plopped right over whatever the sacred sites were. And so inside this chamber is the source, and you can see the water pouring out down through this channel. So those are the Galician examples, and I threw this in here while I was searching the archives digital files for bathhouse, and I found that I had taken this photo in Carlisle, and it is a goddess with a cornucopia according to the museum's display, which was taken from a bathhouse in Bewcastle. And Cumbria is an interesting name, as I found when I was there. It's related to Cymru, which is the Welsh name for Wales. In fact, Wales extended all the way up to the Scottish border, such as there was one, you know, in the period before the English took over all of the most of the island. And so Cambria, Cumbria, these names are all referring to that northwest edge there of what's now called England. And actually Carlisle was part of Scotland for a lot of history as well. So just throwing this in here because the presence of a goddess image from a bathhouse. Oh, what am I doing? I should have put bath in here. I didn't even think of it. The sacred waters of Sul, Aquae Sulis, as the Romans called it, was a major sanctuary, and it did have goddess heads. There's a gilt bronze head, beautiful one, of Minerva, who gets syncretized with some of the other local Britannic goddesses. But then if we move over into Eastern Europe, the use of a sacred bathhouse was very pronounced among the ancient pagan Slavic peoples. And in Ukraine, there were the pagan of Lani, or just means the people of the forest, are still celebrating ceremony inside the bathhouse, which is known in Russian. The older name for it is bozhena, which means it's the same root as the word for God and goddess in Russian. It's even related to Hindu words for God, like Bhagwan, in name that's mostly used for means Lord, I guess, in their context. These are old Indo-European word. Anyway, bozhena, the name of the house derived from the root, which means the divine. It is an indicator of sacredness. So the horror that's going on in this picture is that Olga and her men go to the Drevlani and say, okay, let's have a party, we're going to talk to you. And the Drevlani traditionally would have the bathhouse as a place of peace where no violence could take place. And what Olga does in this story is she locks them into the bathhouse and then sets it on fire. And so this is like a major desecration and sign of absolute, I mean, well, when you murder somebody in a vicious way, that's the ultimate in disrespect. But anyway, this story signals a break in the continuity of these old ways in which there were these places of peace, in which all political differences were set aside, all family rivalries or whatever it may be, were not allowed to interfere with the sacred space. And this is exactly what she overthrows in the process of Christianization about 1,000 years ago, a little bit more. So here's bozhena, it's spelled in English, or the banyas they nowadays more often say. And so this is an interesting Russian woodcut because you see that not only are the women bathing in these hot tubs, but there's the benches and you see them massaging each other. She's got a birch whisk broom between her legs there and another one in her hand. You see them wielding these brooms. They're actually using them to whisk their body and to stimulate circulation and bring blood to the surface and stimulate the sweating. Here they are sitting on the platform, each of them equipped with one of these birch leaf whisks. And you see buckets and everything going on. But also kind of yogic stretches happening. The women are working conjunctly, together with each other in order to help each other cleanse and stretch. And this is a space for healing and wellness. And I'm not able to get any slides of this, but Maria Gimbutas talks at great length about how in Lithuania and Latvia too, they also had the bathhouse as an important place not only of healing and also for childbirth, but also for ceremony. And so about, even though I wasn't able to get any images to show of it in this slideshow. So then there's the sauna of the Finns, and here too, the protocols are very clear. It's peaceful, no arguments. This is not a place for any kind of aggression to take place. It's a place of healing. And so, and I like this with the whisk of the bundles of plants as part of the treatment. And so, and there's some chants that I don't have right in front of me, but Old Mother Kave, Kave means woman. So they're calling on the old woman of the sauna to take away the pains. And I'll have more about this at another time, probably in my online course. But there are chants that once were part of the experience in the sauna. It's been secularized because the chants were completely tied into the old religion and they didn't survive the process of Christianization. All right, and so this is a rare picture from medieval Czechia, and you've got the person with the whisk broom again of birch on the upper shelf, and here is the stones and pouring water in the oven with the stones to heat them up. I'm assuming the stars mean this is all happening at nighttime. And so this is very authentic picture. Later on, we get most of the images of bathhouses, including from the Czech world, are of bathhouses in a medieval context of women waiting on men and also servicing them sexually. And so bathhouses become known as brothels and are run by the churches in many cases, but are eventually also outlawed in many places because of the way the sex trade moves in on the bathhouses. And so there's a shift that happens there from a sacred and healing context into something with its very strong sexed dissymmetry of, men as the one who are pleasured and women who are the ones who are waiting on them. And here it's monks who are, being attended by the bath woman. And then you have pornified representations also. This is a German artist of the 16th century, somewhere around 1600. And so you've got these openly sexualized images, which really Hans Baldung Grün and other artists of the witchcraft demonology pornographic period. where there's a lot of lesbic scenes. And this is a pretty rare thing to find in most European art, especially this explicitly. But just to note that this theme also ties in with representations of witches in the early 1500s or so. And then finally, coming to Ireland. And so there are a lot of these flagstone teach-an-alais, sweat house, literally, buildings scattered around Ireland. I have not been able to find any kind of folkloric, ceremonial context around them. They're definitely places of healing, and most of the testimony refers to how in this very wet and cool island that they are used primarily for treatment of rheumatism and arthritis. And so there's one and another example, and they too have these low entrances. And there's a practical purpose to this, which is that you don't want heat rises, and so the lower part, you don't want the hottest part of the sweat house, you don't want the hot air to escape out the doorway. And usually people are going to pull a cover over that doorway anyway as they enter it. But we're really missing huge pieces of what all this was about before Christianization. Because the indicators in Europe and other places is that sweating was a part of a sacred vision questing, ceremonial, healing, transformative experience. That's its cultural context. But it's very, very hard to track. And so that's what I have for you today on the sweat houses of traditional Europe.